Hello and welcome to another video from me. This time I'm going to react to, how is his name? Constantine James, and his video George R. Martin's World is Rotting. So first off, I haven't seen this video, I'm reacting to it live, and I skipped to the first 3 minutes, or after the first 3 minutes, because I figured the beginning is not saying much. And first off, I kind of agree with the base statement that his world is rotting in book form, because the books are dead and there's nothing more coming out in this area. They are dead. He's lost either motivation or ability to finish his own story. That's the matter of fact. That's the status quo that we know. But I feel like this guy is a book purist and he's gonna take the approach of somehow blaming the show, or even pretending like the show is rotten as well. And it's not only the books, it's the show, despite Game of Thrones becoming the greatest drama TV show of all time, House of the Dragon being the biggest HBO series premiere in history, and also A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, in terms of its relatively small scale, becoming so popular and beloved. Like, the show universe is doing so amazingly well. So good. You can't claim it's rotting or rotten in any way, shape, or form. But I feel like he's gonna go that way. He's gonna, of course, blame also the show for the book's failure, besides blaming or claiming that the show is rotten itself. But let's find out what he has to say.
And in order to explain why it's dying, I'm going to need to go over the 3 shows we currently have: Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, who have all in different ways affected the lifespan of this wonderful series. But before I get into each one, I want to define what I mean by George R. Martin's world is rotting. George R. Martin's world is one thing and one thing alone: the books that he has written. We have the main 5, A Game of Thrones, A Clash of Kings, A Stone of Swords, A Feast for Crows, and A Dance with Dragons. 3 novellas, being The Hedge Knight, The Sworn Sword, and The Mystery Knight, and 2 history/world-building books, Fire and Blood, and The World of Ice and Fire. So 10 main pieces of work. There's other little things here and there, but if you want to know A Song of Ice and Fire, these are the commandments. And 10 different books sounds like a lot to someone who hasn't started them yet, but believe me, once you're in, you'll understand it's nowhere near enough, because nothing is finished. Fire and Blood is book 1 of 2. The 5 main books have been waiting for book 6 for over 15 years, and the 3rd novella has been waiting on a 4th for over 16 years. So in many different fonts, A Song of Ice and Fire is a book series frozen in time, which is annoying in and of itself, because yes, not having a single concluded story is frustrating, but where these books have started to rot is in the way people view them because of their adaptations. The 2 most...
Yeah, like I said, he's gonna blame the show somehow for George R. Martin's failure to finish his own story in his own chosen medium.
Popular adaptations of George R. Martin's books are Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, and issue is, they're both terrible adaptations of the source.
Of course, they are so terrible that they became so much more popular than its source material.
Now, understand, I am not here to debate the quality of the shows in and of themselves. How well written...
No, of course, because that would be the right approach, the fair and just approach to judge a story on its own. No, he's not gonna go that way. No, it's only unfair, unreasonable, and ridiculous comparisons to books that don't have to take care of budget, of time restraints, or anything else that you have to face in probably the biggest TV show production, fantasy TV show production of all time. No, he's not gonna make it. He doesn't want to be a fair judge. He just wants to complain that the show changes stuff from the books and can't copy everything one to another medium. That's his issue, because he's a book purist.
Show is and how faithfully adapted it is aren't necessarily the same thing. I'd say season 4 of Game of Thrones is one of the best seasons of television ever made.
Of course you say it, because that's like the most easy way to earn approval online, and also the least, might I even say, like risky way or dangerous way to approach the show without having to fear to being attacked for having a different opinion once that you made up with your own mind, instead of just relying to follow a hateful hive mind who agreed upon that season 4 is the last good, let alone best season of the show, and everything that came after was bad. Of course he's gonna judge that. Of course he's gonna uphold that safe opinion that doesn't get him roasted online, but instead cheered.
And yet it concludes by removing everything that made book theory and post A Storm of Swords interesting, and it never brought in Lady
Like what?
Stoneheart, who's a
Because we got Sansa and Arya stuck instead.
rival at what would have been the end of season 4, completely changes many plot lines in the
There were still book purists who were even still hopeful by the end of season 6 that Lady Stoneheart would appear there.
story. A show can be great and still be a terrible adaptation. Issue is Game of Thrones by the end of it.
Yeah, the biggest question is, what matters more to you? A great show on its own, or being a nice and comfortable adaptation? I think it's the latter.
Is both. Game of Thrones, at the peak of its popularity, was the biggest show to ever exist. It was something inescapable. Even if you weren't watching it, you knew about it because everyone you knew was watching it. Whenever people ask me what I do for work, and I tell them I talk about A Song of Ice and Fire, they look at me like I have two heads, because 99% of the people have no idea what I'm talking about. But when I say the books Game of Thrones is based off of, they instantly know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Game of Thrones, the show that everyone knows and most people now hate. And this is the first issue.
Not true either. There are polls, surveys online where the slight majority, yeah, it's very split, but it's still a slight majority that is in favor of the ending and the final season. It's just that the majority that is pleased with the ending doesn't feel the need to scream out loud that much online and to share their hatred for the ending.
Leading to the rot of A Song of Ice and Fire. Game of Thrones getting so popular and being so incredibly inaccurate and then flat out awful has absolutely tarnished the way people view the series. It's not worth getting into every.
That's why House of the Dragon became the biggest series premiere in HBO history.
Single change Game of Thrones made while adapting A Song of Ice and Fire, because in truth, we could literally be here for hundreds of hours going over everything. So you're just gonna have to take my word for it, and the word of literally every other A Song of Ice and Fire creator or fan
book purists
on this app. Game of Thrones changed almost everything about the source material while creating the show.
It changed a lot. That's true, yes.
But to go over a few big ones, magic is one of, if not the single most important thing in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Not true at all. It's also very, how is it called? Low fantasy, is it called that? There's high fantasy like Lord of the Rings, where you have all those mystical creatures around, and rituals and magic and all this kind of stuff that is completely imaginary. Whereas A Song of Ice and Fire, a lot is built upon, or at least has a lot of inspiration drawn from real history, from real places, real people. There are fantastical elements in it, but it's a very low amount of it, both in the books and the show, compared to like every other fantasy series that is out there. Harry Potter has more magic and fantastical creatures and items in it than A Song of Ice and Fire. Almost every, I would say, fantasy story is more in touch with magic and fantasy than A Song of Ice and Fire, where the fantasy amount is very low. And like I said, that's not show exclusive, that's also true for the books.
And it's barely ever mentioned.
And I would just want to mention, in this video he's now showing the shadow that killed Renly, probably, or I don't know if that's, no, like there's a woman lying. I don't know what this scene is supposed to be referencing. But I'm just gonna assume it's Melisandre's shadow to kill people in book 2. And that's also in season 2 of the show. That wasn't abandoned by the show at all. People always make, book purists most of all, always make this claim, the show abandoned so much magic from the books. And then I asked, like, what exactly did they abandon? I can name a few things. The talking door from the wall, the dragon horn, glass candles who have been mentioned in the books, but not even utilized or giving them any room to shine. They have been mentioned the glass candles, but they have not been put into action up until now, up until the end of book 5. Glass candles, the talking door, the dragon horn. I'm being fair, I'm even adding the Horn of Winter, despite we are not even having yet see it. We haven't even seen it yet, and we also haven't really been proven if this horn is actually magical or powerful or anything. Like, yeah, and then we also have more direwolf walks in the books, because it's not only Bran in the books who can walk into a direwolf, it's the other Stark siblings who can do it as well. Yeah, those are the things where you could argue, yeah, there's more magic in the books, but it's not really that much, and it's not that consequential, not that impactful, that those things are left out from the show. That's it.
In the show, Jon Snow, whose character is specifically defined by his ambition, ends up being wholly unambitious.
Not true. Jon in the books is a lot more ruthlessness. He's a lot more ruthless and harsh in the books compared to the show. He's more heroic, he's more stubborn, and he has a better heart. Yeah, he has a better heart in the show than in the books, that's true. But he's not more ambitious in the books than he's in the show. In the books, in the show, his main dream, the only reason he goes to the Night's Watch, is to become a ranger north of the wall, just like his uncle Benjen. That's true for both the books and the show. It's not ambition that leads him there. It's family and tradition, but not ambition. He doesn't want to become Lord Commander.
Important characters such as Young Griff, Lady Stoneheart.
No need for Young Griff when the show provided us with a real Aegon instead, in form of Jon Snow.
Ron Greyjoy.
Yeah, we will have to wait and see whether Book Euron will be as impactful as Show Euron, who was able to kill Jaime Lannister, to kill 2 Sand Snakes, a full-grown dragon, and who was able to fuck the Queen. We will have to see whether Book Euron can live up to that.
Ariane Martell, John Connington.
Ariane Martell, fair point. There's no real equivalent. Kinda, there's Elaria Sand, who's kinda an equivalent to her. But then again, they are also very different. But also, I think Elaria Sand did her job just as well as Ariane's story might turn out in the books eventually.
Aaron Greyjoy, Asha, Patchface.
He's now pretending like there's no Asha Greyjoy in the show just because they renamed her Yara instead.
And Dorne in general are all cut or gutted by the show because they simply just didn't think they were important enough to adapt.
They are not cut or gutted, they are just a lot more simplified, a lot shorter. That's called adaptation. Because D&D were aware you can't adapt A Feast for Crows into multiple full seasons of television without to the detriment to the show's momentum and storytelling and pacing. A Myrish swamp, a fat pink mast, her cunt became the word. Yeah, George can write fucked up and embarrassing porn dialogue as well in the books. But of course, book purists act like those instances either don't exist at all or they are not as bad. Like, be serious. Be consistent at least.
They couldn't even put face paint or prosthetics on Bloodraven, a character whose whole thing is he's an albino missing an eye. And that's not even getting into how the character designs are just genuinely abysmal.
Yeah, and he's now showing a photo of Dario, the show Dario, with a blue beard. Yeah, because that's what makes a great adaptation.
Compared to the books. D&D took this beautiful fantasy epic that's flowing with magic and life and made it dull, lifeless, and gray. To make my most general, broad-sweeping point about Game of Thrones and its adaptation, D&D never read the books. I believe they
did. That's why George hired them to do the job.
Skimmed and jumped around, but I do not believe they ever got past A Storm of Swords, because books 4 and 5, which make up a third of the book series overall, are hardly adapted. The first 4 seasons...
They adapted Cersei's Walk of Atonement, Jon's stabbing, and Daenerys' escape on Drogon's back out of Daznak's pit. Those were the 3 climaxes from Book 4 and Book 5. They adapted the core story of these 2 books, the most biggest plot points. They are not gonna add all the filler, all the unnecessary chapters. That would have killed the TV show. They are smarter than that. They are no unreasonable book purists who believe everything needs to be in there in order to get a great story.
Or as follows. Season 1 is based on Book 1, Season 2 on Book 2, Seasons 3 and 4 are based on Book 3, and Season 5 is based on Books 4 and 5.
There's also stuff from Book 4 and 5 already adapted in Season 4, like Sansa's storyline, Theon's storyline, Bran's storyline, Brienne's storyline, and I think kinda Arya's storyline as well. No, that's not true. But those are some examples where there's already stuff from Book 4 and 5 adapted also in Season 4. And also, some Book 4 and 5 stuff was adapted in Season 6 as well. For example, like Jaime's storyline. And again, Brienne's storyline or Sam's storyline.
How do we go from a maximum of one book a season to 2 books in one season when
Because they didn't do it. They adapted majority of books 4 and 5 storyline in season 5, that's true. But they also adapted, just like I already mentioned, some storylines in season 4 as well, and also some leftovers in season 6. So I would say like they adapted those 2 books in like 1 1/3 seasons of TV, at least. So not just one season.
of those books alone is the second largest in the entire series. To put it bluntly, D&D did not care about the books. They adapted what they
Neither does George R. R. Martin.
specifically liked and cut out or dismissed what they didn't. Which is why the later seasons start to fall apart. Not because they ran out of source material.
No, of course not. No, the biggest issue for book purists is that the final season do not align, they do not go the route that book purists imagine where the final books would go, where their headcanon is, where the theories and predictions for those last books come true. The show didn't went that way. The red dream of every book purist where all the fairy tales come true. That's the biggest issue. Book purists could have loved season 8 if it gave them a pat on the back by having all the fan theories coming true.
But because they stopped caring about it. And for what it's worth, Game of Thrones really started leaving things behind in season 2. Dany's House of the Undying arc in season 2
is probably one of the best show improvements over the books. Because there's actual drama and tension in Carve, unlike her book storyline.
Is a joke compared to what happens in the books. And unfortunately, Game of Thrones being so unforgettably popular has absolutely tarnished the way people view the book series. A lot of people...
Of course, it's not for the reason that the books have been stuck in purgatory for 15 years. No, that's not the reason why the books are doomed. No, it's all on the show.
I'm talking millions, just assume that the show got bad because the books got bad, or that the show got bad because the book...
That was the popular opinion when Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragon initially were released. That those books were subpar, they were not as good as the first 3, they were meandering, they didn't advance the plot, it was mostly filler, with too much focus on uninteresting characters who were just introduced instead of relying or putting the main focus on the characters that have been part of the story since book 1. For example, like Sansa and Bran, who have been there since book 1, only had they had only 3 chapters each within those 2 books, where there are like 100 chapters. And those 2 core characters only had like 6 chapters together.
Didn't have any more content. To make matters worse, because we have never gotten any concrete statements about what George actually told D&D, and never will because of NDAs, people have just taken to assume that the show characters are the book characters, and their endings will be the same. So why should they go read thousands of pages worth of content if they already know where the story ends? And I know this is true because I was once that person. To people who don't really read all that often, or I don't know, just have a lot of shit to do because getting groceries costs an arm and a leg now, the idea of picking up a series that is over 4,000 pages and will take you around 200 hours to complete on audiobook is a tall ask when people believe they have already gotten an ending to the story and didn't like it. So while Game of Thrones definitely brought in a lot of new readers, I believe it also alienated
the majority. I think there was like numbers on Wikipedia. about 80% of book readers from A Song of Ice and Fire only read them after the first season of Game of Thrones has aired. The majority of readers only read the books because of the show, and most likely they've seen the show before they have read the books.
A bunch of potential readers as well. And for reference, Game of Thrones Season 8 had an average of 40 million viewers per episode, and hundreds of millions of viewers across the seasons. While in comparison, A Song of Ice and Fire has just crossed 100 million copies sold this year after the success of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which we will get to later. These stats, combined with the thousands of fans I have personally spoken to, have led me to believe that the amount of Game of Thrones show watchers who have read the books in full, front to back, is probably less than 10%, and that's being very generous.
Yes, just like I said.
In all actuality, that number is probably closer to 5. And because of this, when people think of Jon Snow, they think of Kit Harington. They think of,
I don't want it. I never have. Sister, I don't want it. And that's what I told him.
They don't
too deep dialogue for him.
think of, he wanted it. Jon knew then. He wanted it as much as he had ever wanted anything. I have always wanted it, he thought guiltily. May the gods forgive me. It was a hunger inside of him, sharp as a dragonglass blade. A hunger, he could feel it.
Yes, he wanted to be a Stark. He wanted to be Lord of Winterfell. It's not about becoming Lord of the Seven Kingdoms to become King of Westeros.
People think of Dany, they think of the tyrant who...
And he also said this in the show as well to Sam. I always wanted to be Jon Stark.
randomly decided to burn down King's Landing.
Yeah, randomly. Yeah, tell me you haven't understood Game of Thrones without telling me.
Just because. They don't...
Yeah, just because. Just because Jon Snow is the true heir and not her.
think of all that Daenerys wanted back was the big house with the red door.
Yes, and she saw a red door in the Belts episode in the form of the Red Keep, the biggest red door she has ever seen. And what door was it? What did it enlighten once she opened the door? Hell. Hell on earth.
The lemon tree outside her window, the childhood she had never known. When people think of Bran, they think of the boring block of wood that disappeared for a season and then proceeded to be the most
Just like he disappeared for an entire book.
boring character in the history of characters.
Bran isn't the most beloved book point of view character either. But of course he's not gonna mention that. He's just trashing on the show. He's not gonna do it for the books, because that would require honesty and consistency, and book purists are not about that.
They don't think of the stone is strong, Bran told himself. The roots of the trees go deep, and under the ground the kings of winter sit their thrones. So long as those remained, Winterfell remained. It was not dead, just broken, like me, he thought. I'm not dead either.
Yes, Bran the Broken, thanks.
My point is, Game of Thrones controls the conversation about characters from a song.
My point is, like, book quotes like this prove once again, and this was also confirmed by George R. Martin himself, that King Bran is from George.
Ice and Fire, and this has caused the general public to completely turn on the source material because of how disappointing the show was. And to make
Yes, the show is to blame for George's failure.
matters matters worse, for those few fans who have read the books after watching this show, it's really quite hard to separate the two. Even after reading the entire series front to back, there were still tons of characters and plot lines that when I thought about, I would think of the show, or at a minimum, some weird show-book hybrid. So a large part of the rot affecting the book series is the fact that the success and then failure of Game of Thrones has stained the reputation of the books.
He is not daring to criticize George R. R. Martin in the slightest bit,
even though they have almost nothing to do with the show at all. Now, the next show I'm going to cover is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and before I go into how I feel this show affects the legacy of the books, understand that Season 1 has been my favorite thing that I've seen all year across movies.
Of course we are, because that's once again the safe and easy opinion to have online.
And TV. I thought it was pretty great, but with that being said, it still has...
And you will be one of the first to hate on Season 2, or at the latest on the first season without source material. You are gonna trash on it.
Issues as an adaptation, and I believe that very soon it's going to start running into some problems.
Yeah, wow, he's very self-reflective, very self-aware. He's already aware he's gonna hate on the future seasons. I knew it, but at least he's honest. I didn't expect him being that self-aware.
All three shows, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, this one is by far the most faithful to the source material, and even then, it still makes some changes. Some for the better, and some for the worse. While A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms was airing, I covered all of the characters that I felt the show had improved upon. I strongly feel that Aerion Brightflame, Lionel Baratheon, Egg, Raymond Fossaway, and Sir Arlen are all better in the show than they are in The Hedge Knight, and characters such as Baelor, Dunk, Daeron, and Maekar are all very close in terms of quality to their book counterparts. But with that being said, as an adaptation, even the best of the three has problems. Firstly, the humor in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is elementary. Ira Parker went out of his way to insert every bodily fluid joke he possibly could, and aside from those moments just being
I died laughing watching the show.
Disgusting, Ira Parker has a really bad...
Oh no, this is beneath your level, or the jokes, or they are not sophisticated enough, or they don't touch my nerves well enough, or that's too much for me, or it's too disgusting. Blah, blah. I go rather watch, I don't know what comedies are there even around now? Nothing. There's nothing. Like, all are there comedy shows, sitcoms? Are there still some new around? Like, aren't they all dead? I can't even name one. I should rather, or you should rather watch. I don't know. I can't even think of any sitcom shit.
Habit of undercutting emotional moments with dumb humor. The opening to A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is powerful. It's pouring, and all we have as far as audio is the rain and Dunk crying as he buries his father. The opening sucks you right into the emotional conflict and grabs the viewer's attention. But then, in the middle of Dunk crying, we get some slapstick humor of Arlen whacking Dunk because Ira Parker thought it would be funny to insert literal slapstick humor
because it was funny.
A powerful scene. Because
God forbid they implement humor on the show.
Is subjective. I found this change to be tonally off. It gave me whiplash and turned a great scene into a good scene that, if handled with a little more care, could have been so much more. And this isn't the last time
by ripping or stripping it completely from its uniqueness. That would be better storytelling. That would be more original and greater. Like, those people hate innovation. They hate stories being their own. They just want stories to follow like a blueprint, a pattern that you get as handout in film school or something, and that's the only way you are supposed to tell stories. And they think that's great storytelling, by sticking to formulas and telling the same story over and over again.
Parker will do something like this. In episode 4, Dunk delivers a powerful monologue about how knighthood in Westeros.
Oh my god. When the guy farted, I screamed. It was so fucking funny, holy shit.
Has fallen on dark days, how he stood up for what was right and is looking for anyone to back him in this conflict. In the book, he asks and is met with shame, with people not having the guts to look him in the eye and tell him that they aren't true knights. But in the show, someone gets up, and the music builds to the fattest, wettest fart I've ever heard.
Great. Yeah.
This fart joke,
Because you are afraid to laugh. Like, are you so bound to your critic persona that you can't dare to laugh about something funny? Okay, it's subjective what you find funny and not, but really, like, get the stick out of your ass. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is supposed to be more comedic, more funny, and less serious than its predecessors, than the main stories of Game of Thrones.
Undercuts the serious tone that the scene should and did have, but it's
Kinda like it was intended to be this way.
largely glanced over in terms of criticism because Baelor showing up shortly after saves it. And these little issues here and there build up to one of the most frustrating changes in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms: the final scene. After having a really great final episode, filled to the brim with thematic potency, Ira Parker just had to end the season on one stupid final joke. In The Hedge Knight, after the trial by combat and his conversation with Dunk, Maekar realizes that he has to let Egg go, that his way of life has failed his children, and that he isn't the father that Egg needs right now. So he lets Egg go with Dunk, and this is a wonderful character decision.
Again, a book purist complaining that the show didn't copy the books one-to-one.
The Hedge Knight is all about how radical goodness can cause radical change. Dunk, a random nobody, risks his life to save a girl who he never even has a proper conversation with, simply because it was the right thing to do. It was an illogical decision by Westeros' standards and by our own worlds. Would you potentially throw your own life away for someone who doesn't even matter to you all that much? Probably not, but Dunk does, because that's what a true knight should do. And this decision leads to Baelor doing the same thing. It's illogical and downright stupid. For Baelor, the heir to the...
He kinda missed the whole point that Lionel Baratheon made, that Baelor didn't risk anything because he knew, like, his brother, and not necessarily his brother, but at least the Kingsguard won't seriously hurt him because he's the crown prince. He knew that, and he used that as basically Targaryen propaganda to make himself more popular with the people of Westeros, who already are not that keen, not well spoken about incestuous aliens that are the Targaryens. And because he's aware we don't have dragons anymore, we need to be more humble, we need to be more in line with the people. We can't just fly over them and threaten them with fire and blood. It was a political move to fight for Dunk, for the lowborn, for free folk, basically, to improve the image of the Targaryens. He didn't risk anything. Like, and this book purist doesn't even get that. He thinks that Baylor made the same sacrifice as Dunk. Holy shit. Talking about your favorite story that you didn't even understand.
Iron Throne to risk his life to protect a random nobody who he hardly knows, and yet he does it because it's what a true knight should do. Dunk's radical goodness caused radical change in Baylor, and Maekar, who's presented as an antagonist in the story, is the final radical change of it. It's illogical for a father to allow his last son to go off on his own with a random guy he just met. But Dunk's radical goodness inspires radical change in Maekar. He allows him to put his own pride aside and do what he knows deep down was best for his son. You know what they say. Sometimes if you love someone, you have to know when to let them go. But in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Ira Parker decided to have Egg simply run off again, and he ends the season with Maekar enraged that he can't find his son, which completely undermines what up until this point was a powerful through line. And why does this happen? Because
I couldn't care less that they changed it.
Parker thought it would be funny, and didn't think it would be a big deal. Also, I guess Egg didn't learn his lesson about the damage lying can do. Whatever. Point is, Ira Parker adapted The Hedge Knight, and was hell-bent on inserting ridiculous humor that did nothing but undercut the narrative for the sake of his own weird enjoyment. And that's a damn shame, because it brings down what was a pretty good adaptation of The Hedge Knight and a great
Still no daring to criticize George.
Season of TV. But my issues with this season aside, I foresee A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms running into problems very quickly, because they are actually going to run out of...
Really quickly? From the sound of it, they already ruined some stuff for you. You are already complaining about changes from the books. Like, what are you pretending like you haven't hit any sour spots, you haven't spotted any issues yet. You are already complaining about season 1.
Source material before they know it. The Sworn Sword and the Mystery Knight are both very short, and if HBO keeps the pace that they want to keep, and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms stays making money, they will be out of novellas to adapt by 2029. And now George R. R. Martin has said he is planning on releasing another novella or two before that happens, because he wants Ira Parker to have the source material to base the show off of. But if we're being honest, I highly doubt that's going to happen, which means A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms could very well go down the same path Game of Thrones went down, starting
by becoming a masterpiece.
Off with a few amazing seasons of television before running out of
8 seasons
material or choosing not to adapt some of it, and then not being able to keep up with George R. R. Martin's quality without the source material, because frankly, they aren't as good at writing as he is. And even still,
they were able to finish the entire show, 8 seasons of television within 9 years, while George R. R. Martin is unable to finish his own story, to finish his 6th book within 15 years since the last book has been revealed, unable to finish his entire main storyline because he's still stuck in purgatory with it for 30 years? 96 was when the first book was released. That's 30 years, and his story is still not over, and he just has to put words on paper, and he can't do it. Yeah, but he's the better writer, sure, when he can't even write.
After people finish A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, where is the next natural place to go? If this was their first experience in Westeros, it's Game of Thrones, and as I've laid out previously, that just leads them down a dark path that ultimately
because Game of Thrones is no Disney story.
Harms the books more than it helps them. I'll say this.
By giving them 80% of its readers.
A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms did bring interest back to the series for the first time in a long time, but you can't put a band-aid on a bullet hole. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms was a short-term fix to a Winds of Winter sized wound, and it's only going to fester. Now, the final show we are going to be talking about today is House of the Dragon, and this one is the easiest to explain. House of the Dragon is compounding the rot of A Song of Ice and Fire by not giving a shit about the source material. More than both Game of Thrones and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, House of the Dragon has always been doing its own thing, and this got so bad.
Which it kinda has to, because it's based on a fictional history book where the part of the Dance of Dragons consists of only like 300 pages, and they are supposed to make 4 seasons of television out of it, with like 10 hours of screen time each season for only 300 pages, where the majority is not even real narrative, with characters interacting with each other, with giving their thoughts, with having actual dialogue. No, it's just the accounting of a fake historian.
That even the big man himself, George R. R. Martin, had something to say about it. Around 2 years ago, he released his infamous Toxic Butterflies post that essentially said Ryan Condal has been and will continue to make changes to his material that it makes for a fundamentally weaker and less impactful story overall.
That's your interpretation of it. He was just talking about the butterfly effect, that once you make changes down the line, the changes keep increasing and growing. He didn't really said it was horrible because of it, he just said he was concerned because of it. And he also named or called Blood and Cheese in the show as very well done, as horrific, just like it was in the books. It was different, of course, but just as impactful. People who believed that Blood and Cheese in the show was gonna have a Red Wedding type of aura or impact on its audience were so delusional all the time. Because Blood and Cheese was always just gonna be on the level on the level of the season 2 premiere of the main show of Game of Thrones itself, where Joffrey ordered Robert's bastards to be killed. Also a horrible scene, and almost the same where we see children, small children. We see a baby being stabbed to death in this scene, very gruesomely. But it still didn't have the same impact as like a Red Wedding, just like Blood and Cheese was never gonna have that kind of impact, because it happens to character we barely know, to very minor characters, not to a Robb Stark or Catelyn Stark.
And lo and behold, with Season 3, Episode 1, George R. R. Martin was right. Aegon and Viserys not playing a role in the Battle of the Gullet because Ryan made them too young in Season 1.
The Season 3 premiere of House of the Dragon was probably the best episode of the entire show thus far. But of course, book purists hate on everything.
Ended up creating a butterfly effect where Jace's death is missing a lot of the impact that it had from the book, making his death less of a heroic sacrifice and more of a whoopsies. But it's not just Jace. Turning Nettles, a character who's meant to demonstrate that you don't have to be the blood of the dragon to be a rider, into Rhaena, a Targaryen princess, completely undercuts what George was trying.
He kind of forgot we have Ulf and Sir Hugh in the show. But yeah, those are just bastards as well. Oh no, I think I fucked up. I think you meant Nettles isn't related to a Targaryen at all. Oh, okay. Fair point. But I still don't care about it, because I'm not a book purist. They can do whatever changes they like to do as long as the story remains great. I don't care.
Trying to get at with Nettles. Making Team Green be comically evil and letting Team Black get away with everything creates a narrative where the viewer is supposed to be rooting for one side over the other, when the whole point of Fire and Blood is that both sides are flawed and they are all victims of a system.
Not really, like the blacks are heavily favored in the terms of narrative and history as well.
Bigger than themselves that ultimately rips them apart. In terms of adaptation, House of the Dragon is an absolute disaster, and yet, because it is miles bigger than Fire and Blood in terms of popularity, when people think about the dance, it will be House of the Dragon that rings loud and clear, not Fire and Blood. The same way it is with Game of Thrones, and
he is just buttered that the shows are bigger than the books.
Song of Ice and Fire. And with the shows covered, I now want to talk about the future at HBO and what many are deeming the MCUification of A Song of Ice and Fire. After the success of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and now A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, HBO is probably...
Yeah, I think George R. R. Martin once said something like, we're gonna show them, I assume he meant like Disney and all other streaming providers, we're gonna show them how to do a real cinematic universe. And thus far, HBO was successful. Every Game of Thrones show thus far, we have only had 3, has been a major success.
Going to greenlight whatever they can from this universe because it's a money printing machine. There's going to be a Sea Snake show eventually, probably some sequels to Game of Thrones. We're getting the Aegon's Conquest movie and so much more. And while all of these will probably be fun and enjoyable in their own right,
I'm so excited for the movie. I hope it's coming out in cinema. I will watch it. I've just watched the season 3 premiere of House of the Dragon in cinema, my first time Game of Thrones in cinema, and it was fucking amazing.
They aren't truly George's. They're based off of his work, but they aren't his. And what I hope
No, not really. No, they are adaptations made by different creators. No, the blasphemy. Oh, call for the heads. No, how horrible.
Proved with my points about the 3 shows is that all 3 exist in their own canon, in their own universes.
No, they all exist in the Game of Thrones universe.
Separate from...
That's his wishful thinking, that they are all not connected. It's not just one big entire story, despite Daenerys Targaryen already having been mentioned multiple times in House of the Dragon.
Not only each other, but the source material as well, which in many ways is a good thing. It means you can enjoy both and just treat them as 2 separate things. Issue is, most people won't consume both, and shows will always be the ones dominating the pop culture zeitgeist. And with these new projects coming out, the conclusion I'm reaching is as time goes on, the Game of Thrones universe, the movies, shows, and animated projects will drown out the main series that remains ever frozen in time.
That's such an unreasonable, hateful claim to blame the show on. To blame the show off. If George was capable, if he was motivated, if he really had a desire to leave a legacy behind that you can be proud of, and if he actually cared about his own story, then the books would have been finished a long time ago. But he doesn't. It's his fault mainly, not the shows.
We will probably hit a point where people might not even know all of these things are based off of books to begin with. And that's a damn shame.
Many are already not aware that there are books the show is based on.
Because the books are so much better.
Oh my god, how fucking... Did you hear how he said it? Like really up his ass. are so much better. So much better that they don't even need to be continued. They don't even need an ending. The ending is Jon Snow is stabbed and is lying dead in the snow. Cersei is naked in the Red Keep, and Daenerys just took a shit in the Dothraki Sea, and Varys killed Pycelle and Kevin Lannister. That's the perfect ending for the books. That's the better ending, because we are not gonna get another ending. That's it. It's so much better than the show.
Now, before I cover the big man himself and his role in all of this, I feel I am compelled to talk about the community, because the community is also playing a role in this world rotting.
A very toxic and unhelpful role.
To cut to the chase, the amount of channels that rely on artificial intelligence to do everything for them in this space is downright repulsive. George R. R. Martin is leading a class action lawsuit against OpenAI for stealing his and his colleagues' work, and you vultures don't even have the stomach to use your own real voices when recording a video. And this shit is just shameful. Man, YouTube was once a place for the absolute best A Song of Ice and Fire.
Of course, he's not moralizing the people for tweeting storytellers both for the books and the show like shit, and like defaming them, spreading lies about them, insulting them. No, that's not the issue. AI is the issue. Like, the lack of self-reflection and awareness is astounding in this one. A true book purist at work.
Content out there. I can't even imagine how much fun it must have been to be Alt-Shift-X or Preston Jacobs 8 years ago, posting things they found interesting and actually getting to have
even more unreasonable book purists. Also, Preston. I mean Preston. I thought he meant Originalvideo. I take it back, because Preston is not as unreasonable, because he is very harsh on both the books and the show. Originalvideo is the unreasonable book purist who is a hypocrite. Preston is a lot more fair and honest and sincere, but he's also still a book purist at heart.
Millions of real people across the globe interact with their content. Now we have AI channels and scam bots in the comments section trying to sell random bullshit. So while the community is definitely not the biggest reason this book series is slowly withering away, it's definitely a sad part of it. But with all that being said, the only thing left to do is address the man at the head of this tragedy, George Raymond Richard Martin. If I were to sum up all the points I made in this video into one sentence, it would be the main reason A Song of Ice and Fire is rotting as a series is because we haven't gotten the sixth and most important book in over 15 years.
Really? That's the issue? Because that's not even the final book. Because really, if book 6 came out after that, we would still be at the same situation. The story would still remain unfinished. It's not, even if he was able to publish that book, we would still be at the same point basically. Because it's not the ending. It's still not finished.
Seriously, A Dance with Dragons is a cruel-ass book. Every character ends on a cliffhanger. There isn't an ounce of closure, and the final page ends with winter has come, which is the blue ball of all blue balls. To finally get to winter, a payoff fans have been building to for 5 books and 15 years, and then not release the next book for another 15 years and counting, is downright cruel. And the reason this series is slowly dying is because George is letting it die. It's getting...
okay, he's self-reflective and honest, and he does dare to criticize George. Okay, I'm impressed.
outpaced and outworked by all the shows, and with every passing day,
I take it back. He's again blaming George's failure on the shows, not on the man itself. Like there wasn't already a 5-year gap between book 3 and book 4, between 2000 and 2005, and another 6-year gap between books 4 and 5 when there still wasn't a TV show around.
people care about the source material less and less. And the why is for many reasons. A lot of people like to chalk it up to George being lazy, and while that's definitely part of the problem, I'm sure there are a lot of other factors as to why he hasn't released the book. And one of those factors is something he mentioned in January, that a lot of people have clowned on him for. He stated that one thing holding him back is the state of the world, that living in such a difficult time has essentially made it harder for him to immerse himself in the
Why is it so difficult?
fantasy world. And honestly, I get it.
He is living better now than he did 15 years ago. He's much more rich. He has much more money and fame since then. The times are not harder, especially not for him.
The world is really messed up right now, and I bet George gets into moods like everyone else where he wonders what the point of it all is.
Yeah, because we all lie awake at night thinking about Ukraine or thinking about Israel. Be honest, this is all virtue signaling. We are not laying awake at night thinking about this stuff unless we are really closely impacted by it and live there and feel the war. Or you have relatives there. If that's not the case, you are just virtue signaling and looking for excuses, or maybe reasons to feel better about yourself because you care about people you don't know and who have a rougher time than you. It's all fake. Because at the end of the day, no one cares more about yourself or loves yourself more than yourself. That's it.
Other writing wins when all of this other really crazy shit is going on. And my answer,
What crazy shit?
as a fan of the series, is that if the world is bothering you so much, do something
Okay, now the show is to blame, but also the entire world is to blame as well.
about it. Because you are in a unique
Putin is why he can't sit down and write a book. Trump is why he can't sit down and write a book. Netanyahu is why he can't sit down and write a book.
powerful position where you can. George is a rare kind of writer. Every time this guy speaks, he has a crowd listening
Because he rarely wrote anything in the past 15 years.
to his every word. If he spit on the floor, people would analyze it, looking for some inkling of the winds of winter. Everything he does is treated with the utmost seriousness by his fans, because people absolutely adore his work. And why do people love his work so much? Because it connects with them like no other series ever has. A Song of Ice and Fire is a special series for many reasons, but its characters are the main one. George says that a reader lives 1,000 lives, while a non-reader only lives one, and this very much rings true in his own series. A Song of Ice and Fire is a story about people. It's a story about hope. It's a story about growth and change and perspective. It's a story filled to the brim with strong themes about morality, identity, politics, anti-war sentiments, and
Yeah, and this was also all in the show, yet you kinda missed it.
so on and so forth. It's 5 books of absolute beauty where George gives his own personal thoughts about our world and makes it endlessly entertaining, because that's what stories are about. They're things that connect people across the world, a place where we are all equal, where we can all go to grow, learn, and love. George changed the world with A Song of Ice and Fire, and if on the off chance
No, D&D changed the world with Game of Thrones.
this somehow gets to you, George, you can do it again. If you're so upset about the state of the world, which you rightfully should be, do something about it.
Yes, because releasing a book is gonna end all war, is gonna end all hunger and famine and diseases in the world. They are all cease to exist if George finishes his story. Yeah, of course.
Tens of millions of impressionable fans across the world, people like me that have had their lives changed by A Song of Ice and Fire, that will take everything you say seriously if you're willing to say it. If you want to see this world change, if you want to try and make it a better place, then pull out your pen, lock in, and be the change in the world that you want to.
This is the biggest dick sucking on George R. R. Martin I have ever witnessed. This is how desperate book purists have become now. You have to treat him like a savior, like a Superman, like a god who has to come down to earth to rescue them by releasing another book. Like, this is the most flattering approach to get George on his ass and get him just to finish his damn books.
See, be the knight you are looking for, because you are one of the few people in this world who can actually make a goddamn difference. With all that being said, I guess that's the end of the video.
With all that dick being sucked.
As I said, this was pretty negative. There's no denying that. But I said what I said. I absolutely adore this series, and I appreciate all of you who have interacted with my content over this last year. Understand, I have no plans to take a break from A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop the video right now because I don't want to have this video go that long, because it wasn't that insightful anyway. It was just basically a book purist doing what book purists do all the time, flattering George, the man who has forsaken them a long time ago, while shitting on D&D and the show, who actually tried to do something, who actually accomplished to finish the story. Even if it wasn't to the liking, they don't accept it, they don't recognize it, they only see it as failure and put the blame on it for George's failure. That's it. I hope you enjoyed. Bye.